She left for Scapa Flow on the 18th of November, and while en route, Fairey Albacores of 817 Squadron depth charged U-517 off Cape Finisterre. The submarine structure was badly damaged and she was scuttled. Surviving crew were rescued by HMS Opportune. USS Hornet was sunk and USS Enterprise was badly damaged at the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands, leaving the United States Navy with only one fleet carrier, USS Saratoga, operational in the Pacific. In late December 1942, Victorious was loaned to the US Navy after an American plea for carrier reinforcement. After a refit in the United States at the Norfolk Navy Yard in January 1943 and the addition of Avenger aircraft, Victorious passed through the Panama Canal on the 14th of February to operate with the United States forces in the Pacific. Her crew suffered a diphtheria outbreak and medical supplies were dropped to her by air. Victorious arrived at Pearl Harbor in March 1943 and was fitted with heavy arrestor wires as Royal Navy wires had proved too light for the Grumman Avenger aircraft. Additional AA guns were also fitted. She sailed for the West Pacific, arriving at Noumea, New Caledonia on the 17th of May to form Carrier Division 1 with USS Saratoga. She sorted immediately for a week with Task Force 14, including Saratoga and battleships North Carolina, Massachusetts and Indiana, sweeping against reported Japanese fleet activity but without contact. 6 aircraft were lost to accidents. Rear Admiral Dewitt Ramsey, commanding the division, carried out evaluation exercises and patrol sweeps in June and determined that Victorious had superior fighter control but handled Avenger aircraft poorly because of their weight. Accordingly, he transferred 832 Fleet Air Arm Squadron onto the Saratoga and US Carrier Air Group 3 onto Victorious. Thereafter, Victorious's primary role was fighter cover and Saratoga mainly handled strikes. On the 27th of June, TF-14 was redesignated Task Group 36.3 and sailed to provide cover for the invasion of New Georgia, part of Operation Cartwheel. Victoria spent the next 28 days continuously in combat operations at sea, a record for a British carrier, steaming 12,223 miles at an average speed of 18 knots and launching 614 sorties. Returning to Noumea on the 25th of July, Victorious was recalled home. Though the Japanese had 4 carriers to Ramsey's 2, it seemed clear they were not intending to press their advantage, and the first 2 carriers of the Essex class had arrived at Pearl Harbor well ahead of schedule. Victorious left for Pearl Harbor on the 31st of July, leaving behind her Avengers as replacements for Saratoga, sailing in company with the battleship Indiana and launching 165 anti-submarine sweeps en route. She also carried US pilots finishing their tours as well as 2 Japanese POWs. After a brief stop in San Diego, Victorious passed through the Panama Canal on the 26th of August and arrived at Norfolk Navy Yard on the 1st of September, where specialised US equipment was removed. Returning home, she arrived at Greenock on the Clyde on the 26th of September 1943, where aircraft and stores were discharged awaiting refit. From December 1943 until March 1944, Victorious was under refit at Liverpool, when new radar was fitted. At the end of March, Victorious with Anson and Duke of York formed Force 1, covering the passage of convoy JW58. On the 2nd of April 1944, Force 1 joined with Force 2, composing of the ageing carrier HMS Furious and the escort carriers HMS Emperor, Fencer, Pursuer and Searcher, as well as numerous cruisers and destroyers. The combined force launched an attack, Operation Tungsten, on the German battleship Tirpitz in Altafiord, Norway. This involved barracudas in 2 waves, hitting the battleship 14 times and strafing the ship's defensive. Although near misses caused flooding and there was serious damage to the superstructure, the ship's armour was not penetrated. Nonetheless, the attack put Tirpitz out of action for some months. The task force returned to Scapa Flow 3 days later. Victorious was to participate in 3 further attacks on Tirpitz in April and May, Operations Planet Brawn and Tiger Claw, but these were cancelled due to bad weather and anti-shipping strikes were substituted. On the 30th of May, an acoustic torpedo attack by U-957 against Victorious failed, and subsequently she made more shipping attacks off Norway. In June 1944, Victorious, in company with HMS Indomitable, left British waters to join the Eastern Fleet at Colombo, Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, where she arrived on the 5th of July. The Eastern Fleet, after a quiet period of trade protection and relative vulnerability, was now being reinforced with ships released from the Atlantic and Mediterranean in preparation for the offensive against the Japanese. After a short preparatory period, Victorious took part in a sequence of air attacks against Japanese installations. The first was Operation Crimson on the 25th of July, a joint attack with HMS Illustrious on airfields near Sabang in Sumatra. In late August, she provided air cover for Eastern Fleet ships that were providing air-sea rescue facilities for the US Army aircraft during air attacks on Sumatra. On the 29th of August, in company with HMS Illustrious and Indomitable, and escorted by HMS Howe, Victorious made airstrikes on Padang, Indarang and Emmahaven. After a short pause, on the 18th of September, Victorious and Indomitable attacked railway yards at Sigli in Sumatra, followed by photo reconnaissance of the Nicobar Islands. There was a friendly fire attack on HMS Spirit, fortunately without causing any casualties. At the end of September, Victorious had a short interval at Bombay for repairs to its steering gear to remedy problems that had arisen during Operation Light. She rejoined the Eastern Fleet on the 6th of October. The next Operation Millet was her last with the Eastern Fleet. On the 17th of October, she launched attacks on the Nicobar Islands and Naunkauri Harbour with HMS Indomitable and escorted by HMS Renown. Enemy air attacks destroyed 4 aircraft and damaged 5 more. During early November, Victorious returned to Bombay for more work on their steering as more problems had arisen during Millet. The British Pacific Fleet was formed at Trincomalee on the 22nd of November 1944 from elements of the Eastern Fleet, and Victorious was transferred to the new fleet. From November 1944 until January 1945, the BF stayed in the Indian Ocean, training and gaining experience that they would need when working with the United States Navy. Victorious, however, remained under repair at Bombay until January 1945 and missed raids on oil refineries at Penkalan, Brandon. In early January 1945, she was available for Operation Lentil, a repeat raid on the oil refineries at Pengalan, Brandon, with HM ships Indomitable and Implacable. Further raids on Japanese oil and port installations in Sumatra were made on the 16th of January. By late January, the BPF had finally quit Ceylon and was en route to its new home base in Sydney. The voyage was interrupted on the 24th of January for another series of raids, this time on Plajo and Mana in southwest Sumatra, during which there was little opposition from Japanese aircraft. This was followed on the 29th of January by unsuccessful attacks on oil installations at Seongi Gerong. This time the Japanese attempted air attacks on the British fleet, but these were beaten off. Total aircraft losses by all carriers was 16 aircraft in action and another 25 lost by ditching or on landing. 9 Fleet Air-on pilots captured by the Japanese were executed on April 1945.